Hello everybody, happy Monday. We are going live today with Michali to answer a question that's been posted on the forum. We're just gonna wait for some of you to join. And how's everybody enjoying today? It's Labor Day Monday. Hello 7899, thank you for joining. Hello Sarla Weiss. Is everyone on today or off today? Never really understood Labor Day, like you're celebrating that you're starting work the next day, or that you started work already. I'm not sure. But, hey. Just gonna wait for Michali to pop on. Hello, Shasha. It's a cool name. How's everyone doing today? While we wait for Michali, do you want to type in if you're celebrating today, what you're doing? I see Michali is coming on. Good, still type in. Ouch. Let's see. Hi, Michali.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? So good to see you.
I am good. How are you doing? So nice to see you too.
Likewise. I was just asking while I was waiting for you for a minute. I was asking everybody if they're celebrating. Like, I never really understood Labor Day. Like, you're celebrating that you're starting work, that you started work.
Uh,
Like,
hey, you know what? If there's a celebration, I'm there.
there. Take it slow.
Yeah.
I'll take it. Anyways, okay, so good to see you again as usual. Thank you everyone for
Thank
joining.
you.
And do you want to go read the question? It's a short one today.
Sure. Yes. So it's from I think Chocolate Chip.
Yeah, I think it was.
Very cute name.
Yeah.
And it's how can I stop feeling so guilty every time I ask my parents to buy things I need that are a bit expensive?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yes, I thought it
you
was
want to jump in?
a question. I didn't even have so much of an answer, but I was thinking I was happy that it was something about guilt because I think that this time of year is very prone to guilt. So
Yeah.
I was hoping that we could segue into that kind of conversation. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess my approach would just be guilt is a feeling. How do we deal with feelings, and to assess whether what is their validity to the feeling, and I guess there's also a lot of nuance missing where it's how old is this person, right? If you're under 8, well, I guess they said they're working, or no, they didn't say that they're working. I think the commenter said that they were working, but if you're underage, right, then it's okay to have needs and desires and ask your parents for them, and then the question is, can we tolerate a no? Just because a parent says no, that doesn't mean that we were wrong or guilty. We need to feel guilty for asking. It's very healthy to express your desires and your needs. Of course, if it's a need and it's a no, then that's a bit murkier and tricky, but it sounds like it might be more a no to a desire. That doesn't mean that you did something wrong by asking. The question is, how can you take and tolerate that no?
Yeah.
Those are just
I agree. I mean, I agree. I think that there's the emotions piece, and oftentimes there's that conversation of guilt versus shame, which I would like to address.
Yeah.
And then the other piece is the relationship dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I wouldn't necessarily say that it's related to that there is an age where people stop wanting their parents or needing their parents, or I think that process and what it looks like for each person varies. And I think that the attachment bonds and the relationship is also, it's just so nuanced, and it's also so specific from person to person. So it's hard to know because I don't know what Chocolate Chip's relationship is like with their parents.
Right.
And so a couple of things come to mind in answering this question. The first is exactly what you said. I love that you brought it up, and especially it's very apropos at this time of year. And I think that guilt, how do we define guilt and shame? How do we differentiate between guilt and shame? Because guilt is healthy, shame is not healthy.
Right. I feel
guilt is
guilt is
what?
I feel like I heard this once, and maybe I'm messing it up, but it's guilt is I did something wrong, shame is I am wrong, something like that.
Yes, exactly. And also guilt is really looking at yourself honestly and saying is there anything that I can improve on? Right. And oftentimes, just this is the therapist to me, our relationship with guilt is also deeply personal, right? How do we cope with mistakes, flaws, failure, right? So this is very tricky for so many reasons, because a lot of people get very triggered when they do something wrong and have a very hard time dealing with the
Mm-hmm.
fact that they've done something wrong, which is a whole topic in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
But guilt is, yeah, I can point to something that I did that I could have done a little bit better with,
Mm-hmm.
or and I can take accountability for that behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Once I take accountability, that yucky feeling that I have, that's appropriate to feel, goes away, because I took accountability and I repaired what I did.
Mm-hmm.
Shame is exactly what you said, is I am bad, I am
Mm-hmm.
wrong. And so even if we've repaired, even if we've taken
Mm-hmm.
accountability, that yucky feeling we have does not go away. And
Mm-hmm.
that oftentimes comes from, different parts of how we were taught to cope with flaws and failure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that needs to be processed independently. So
Yeah.
that's in terms of like the emotion. Now, in terms of the dynamic, which I think is the second component here, I don't know the dynamic, but if it's a safe relationship, I would have a conversation with my parents and
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, look, you buy me things that I really need, and I notice that they're on the pricey side, and I first just want to say thank you. Like, thank you
Mm-hmm.
so much for getting me these things. It really
Yeah.
makes me feel so cared for and loved. I would focus on the positive.
Yeah.
And when you do that in a conversation, you actually start to feel like, oh yeah, I really do appreciate these things. And
Yeah.
it helps you like orient yourself to that positive feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can say to them, look, I've been struggling with guilt about this, and I don't know if my guilt is unfounded or founded, right? I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you feel like this is a tircha, this is a burden on you. If you wish that I didn't ask you, or if you don't mind, or
Mm-hmm.
you're happy to. And I just wanted to touch base with you to see if this is working for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very cautious and very mindful of each time I ask you, and I just wanted to check in to make sure that we're on the same page,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the relational piece. And again, I'm saying that with a disclaimer that I don't know anything about the relationship.
Right.
So I don't know how it's going to go down, because I don't know the personalities
Right.
involved,
I'm sure it's
you
like
know?
nuanced and tricky on some level. I'm like just imagining like maybe the parent will say, no, it's fine. You could ask us, but then maybe there's resentment, and maybe, like later, I'm just like coming up with like multiple permutations of scenarios that like
Yeah.
this like tricky.
Yeah.
Um,
That's what's so tricky about this, is we can't necessarily do the therapy on these,
exactly.
but
Exactly.
we can just guess, right? And
Exactly.
in that situation where, let's say with that version of complexity to the relationship,
Hmm.
right? I would say,
Have a
kind of
conversation
what the
about it.
commenter said, what?
Like have a conversation about that and say like,
Yeah. Yeah. Point it out and
right,
say, I'm sensing something.
right.
Is this true? And if they still say no, we're really fine with this, I would
Hmm.
take their word, and not, even if my intuition is telling me otherwise, I would just work on that surface level. And if I don't like taking from them feeling otherwise, then I would
Hmm.
work towards kind of what the commenter said, like figuring out ways that I can maybe pay for those expenses on my own
Hmm.
gradually. Like, it's okay if it's a process,
Hmm.
but I would kind of have like a dual approach with that, if that's the version of complexity that this
Hmm.
person is dealing with. But there can be
Sure.
like
Okay.
hundreds and thousands of
Right.
different,
Right.
variations of this.
Exactly. And so basically what we're saying is like there's nothing technically to feel guilty about by asking your parents or something. The fact that you're having that feeling might be more of a shame piece. And that's something
Yeah.
to probably explore more in therapy, because since you didn't do anything wrong, regardless of what the dynamic is, like you're allowed to ask, assuming it's respectful. So there's nothing to feel guilty about. There might be shame more associated with that. That's what we're sensing. And that's something to like work through, right? And then you're saying like to proactively have a conversation if you're feeling like, I wonder, would you say that to deal with the shame or the guilt? Like, is that like something that you would like,
Yeah. I think
yeah.
that can, yeah, I think that can be a helpful um clarifying piece,
Mm-hmm.
because if, let's say, this person is confused that
Mm-hmm.
if this is shame or guilt, then having a conversation again with parents that are relatively decent and healthy,
Mm-hmm.
um, um, I think that can help clarify, like, oh yeah, I might be in the wrong here, or this is the shame piece that I have to sort through. But
Right.
even if you're in the wrong, I would I would comfort myself and reassure myself that
Mhm.
that I was proactive in having a conversation. I was following a feeling,
Mhm.
and feelings are not facts; they're guides. And so, I wanted to find out if this feeling was founded on any truth, and if I found out it was, then I can pivot without feeling yucky about myself because it was on them to make a boundary
Mhm.
if they were having an issue with this arrangement, right?
Exactly.
Because they have a right to say no too. But now that I have that information, now I can pivot accordingly.
Correct.
So that's kind of how I would approach it.
Correct. I love it. I love it. And I love that we address like the guilt and the shame piece because I feel like that's like what's so appropriate for this time of year. Like I think we can all point to things that we can feel guilty about because like we're not perfect. But I think that like most of what when we say guilt, a lot of times it's like a cover up for shame. Similar to like how when we say we're like anger is a cover up for other feelings, even though it's
Yeah.
maybe like you're having there's some guilt there, but it's really like very murky and it's really covering up for like shame because people don't like to say like I feel shamed, right? Like we don't go around saying I feel shamed, but like we'll easily say like I feel so guilty about this. I feel so guilty about this. Um,
Yeah.
so I feel like that's like a really good thing for people to like ponder on about like around this time of year, like what's that shame, where's it coming from, and how to deal with it. That's
I love that you said that. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that the first step to combating shame is to distinguish between guilt and shame,
mm-hmm.
and then to change at least the way we talk about it to ourselves,
Yeah.
right? To start to shift that and catch ourselves, saying like, oh, I feel so guilty versus I feel so ashamed.
Mm-hmm.
And to really look at those parts of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
um, and to start to heal those parts, either with therapy or, talking to people or
Mm-hmm.
Brene Brown has a whole thing about vulnerability and shame, and just
Right.
showing that part to other people can reduce shame. So there's a lot of ways to tackle shame. Maybe that'll be another live that we do.
Right. Yeah, I would love
Um,
that. That would be really
but
cool. So for next week, we're
yeah,
making to talk about. We'll
yeah,
do a live on shame, but that would be really
yeah.
cool. Yeah. Yeah, I feel
But
like it can
but
be
yeah,
a live that we do like spontaneous, like not even on our Monday, because I feel like it's really something important to talk about this time of year, like detangling this guilt from the shame and really focusing on the shame because I feel like guilt people, like you say, I'm sorry. Like you go through the like it's basically like tshuva, like I did something wrong,
yeah,
you admit it to yourself, you admit it to the other person, you take something small upon yourself that you mitigate the potential of doing it again in the future, and like you move on. What we really get stuck on is the shame piece, and I feel like that's like a really important thing to talk about. So yeah, we will definitely
yeah,
put it in my brain, you have it in yours, and we'll get back to it.
yes.
Penny Super wrote that 12 steps is amazing for shame. Thank you for sharing that, Penny. That could be that's a good possibility. I'm not so familiar with the 12 steps at this point in my life, but it sounds like it could be about right because I feel like they deal with a lot of like behavioral stuff and guilt stuff. So I would imagine they address the shame piece as well.
Yeah, 12 steps is really great for teaching people how to be accountable,
Mm-hmm.
and like what we were talking about, like distinguishing between guilt and shame,
Mm-hmm.
and really learning how to kind of clear yourself from the inside out in
Mm-hmm.
a like way that's brutally honest with yourself. So 12 steps is wonderful for that. I
Mm-hmm.
think in conjunction with therapy to
With
deal with
therapy.
the same the shameful parts of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
that we might need some more support with, like processing, because usually that comes from childhood stuff.
Correct. I'm thinking the
So yeah,
same
the
thing.
12 steps is awesome
Yeah.
in terms of getting people started.
Correct. Correct. Love it. Thank you. Thank you so much, Michali. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We will
Thank
see you
you,
next week.
guys.
Take
See you
care.
next week.
Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.